Hello, everyone, and welcome to a short but sweet episode of Dominaria Judgment this week, brought to you, as always, by StarCityGames.com, who today has a exclusive preview card for Modern Horizons 2, which we have the honor of coming in here and talking about with all of you. And Ari, I'll let you do the honors here, because coming out of the first Modern Horizons, some things worked, some things didn't. The one takeaway that it seemed like everyone had was, we need more delve. That was where we really put all the power in the right place. Let's make sure we just double down on that as hard as humanly possible.
Yeah, there's a wonderful Twitter account called Eric Lauer Quotes. Eric Lauer being one of the true genius designers that works on the game. And one of the tweets, I believe, to paraphrase, is, shocking that this time the delve card was broken. And we've got a mythic rare delve creature for you today. So if that doesn't get you a little bit excited about it, maybe check the history on those cards.
Yeah, I don't think this one is a Hogak, but it's not a death rattle either. I think it's firmly in between and definitely poised to see some play for sure.
Yeah, so I guess I can just get started and read off the card. We've got Murktide Regent. It is 5 blue for a mythic rare dragon. It's a 3/3, not really the size that you see on a dragon. It's got delve, flying. That 3/3 is a little augmented. Murktide Regent enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each instant and sorcery card exiled with it. And whenever an instant or sorcery card leaves your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on Murktide Regent. So up front, this thing is almost surely going to be bigger than a 3/3 if you delve basically anything from your graveyard, right? And it can only stand to grow from there.
Yeah, kind of hard for this not to be out of lightning bolt range. You really have to have a lot of things go wrong for this to just be, 3/3, which 2 mana for a 3/3 sometimes is still just a fine rate at a base, but you're aiming a lot higher than this, and this one is going to get you that much higher most of the time.
I am kind of sad that Counterspell in this set makes that type line dragon a little less relevant. I was kind of hoping to reveal this to some Silumgar Scorns, but that might have to be on the sidelines.
Yeah, maybe there's some Sarkhan Fireblood action that we can work our way into Modern somehow. Don't know if that card is quite where it needs to be for this power level, but a man can dream, I suppose. But at first glance, this is kind of Tombstalker meets Ethereal Forager for you Legacy denizens out there, and both of those cards have seen substantial play across the broad sweep of Magic history. Ethereal Forager is seeing a lot of play in these various tempo decks in Legacy at the moment. Tombstalker, though, hasn't been seen in quite a while, and I guess if there is a concern about this card, is that it falls more on that Tombstalker end of the spectrum.
Well, I think there's a couple things that this card has going for it that don't really apply to Tombstalker. The first thing is that it's blue, and Tombstalker is not blue, which means that this card is not necessarily competing with Gurmag Angler. That is kind of the big issue for Tombstalker right now, is that you could pay 2 for Tombstalker, or if you max delve, or you could max delve Gurmag Angler to 1 mana, and that's kind of a tough competition. There isn't really a blue card that fits that same mold. So if you're building an Izzet deck, an Azorius deck, a Simic deck, Murktide Regent can fit in your deck and be your delve threat that is a Tombstalker style thing. The other upside is that Tombstalker as a 4-turn clock is a little dicey. Murktide Regent, I think, is really going to shine when it starts hitting the 6/6 or 7/7 range, where it's starting to become a 3-turn clock, or potentially even larger if you start doing some weird nonsense. Like, this card kind of it wants me to. Why do I want to play Relic of Progenitus with my delve card? Like, that is just really weird, and that's what this card is doing.
Yeah, if this card did not have that final clause, I think it would still be solidly playable. I would get excited about it. But this gives you this kind of extra carrot to chase after you already have your 6/6 or 7/7 flyer for 2 mana. This gives you just a little cherry on top of that. But as you say, Tombstalker, just by virtue of its color, has to compete with these other delve cards, which it kind of feels bad when the first big flagship delve card that we saw in Future Sight was quickly outmoded. I guess quickly is close to 9 years later, but you see what I'm saying, by this random common that no one really flagged up when they saw the Fate Reforged spoiler. But even in, let's say, a Dimir deck, so we have mentioned Musasabi so often on this podcast that we're basically his unofficial publicists at this point. He has been playing this Dimir inverter deck in Modern with Tasigur as this backup threat, which doesn't rely on stitching all of these different pieces together. I could very easily see Murktide Regent edging out all of the various competition with the Black Delve threats in that role. It's just this big thing which you clear the way with your Thoughtseize or your Inquisition and then land this, and suddenly they're on not just a 4-turn clock, like you say with Tombstalker or Gomag Angler, but potentially a 3-turn clock, which is, that is the big question with this card, I think, is once you get over 3 toughness, you're out of bolt range, and then beyond that, there's not really a crucial breakpoint. Maybe the 5th versus 6th toughness for Dismember. But how much bigger is a 6/6 or a 7/7 than a 5/5 in the context of Modern these days?
I think it's significantly bigger. Just getting these closing speeds in against these like 5-mana sorcery speed kill spell, or like bring to lights, through the breach. These kind of like big clunky finishers. Having something that closes a turn faster before they can play their 1-card combo with a backup piece. I think that's a pretty big deal.
And as you say, just being a blue card versus being a black card has relevant implications, certainly post Modern Horizons 2, where we have this cycle of the pitch elementals, so Grief and the not so aptly named Subtlety joining it as of 30 minutes ago at the time of this recording, and also Force Negation, still a very relevant card in Modern, and that is a free blue spell that can send its way to your graveyard to be delved away for this. But then also, if you draw 2 copies of Murktide Regent, usually it's going to be quite difficult to deploy that second one, and so you can pitch that copy to the Force Negation. But that's the extra nice thing about this card is if you somehow do have enough fuel to do that, you already have, let's say, a 5/5, a 6/6 Murktide Regent. You play the second one, and then your first one just balloons to gigantic proportions.
That is pretty interesting. I had not thought about the sequencing there. It's kind of like the list of stuff that triggers this is kind of interesting. Like, for example, Flashback does. This is kind of like the same kind of list of stuff we saw with the Lorehold cards from Strixhaven. But at the same time, like, if there's a Rest in Peace on the battlefield, the cards never actually end up in your graveyard to leave your graveyard. So that's just something to look out for.
Yeah, crucially, there was one of the commander cards, I want to say Lyalia, the Blade Reforged or something, which getting a lot of traction in Legacy and Commander, where that had a very specific wording over the cards had to be exiled, and so Flashback cards, curiously, would not trigger that because they go to the stack, they don't get exiled, even though you see exile in the Flashback reminder text. This one is much less demanding in that sense. If it leaves your graveyard, you're fine, and it doesn't really matter how it does that.
Yeah, overall, I think that this is a pretty nice tool for all the various blue decks in the format. I don't think I have a specific shell for it in mind because so many different decks just fit the mark of wanting this. It's got that kind of Stormwing Entity vibe, but it doesn't require you to play Manamorphose.
Yeah, and being in blue also opens up different color combinations than it can go in now. So for example, maybe your Is It Control deck that just wants a 1-card win condition can pivot to this in these post-Cyborg games where now your opponent maybe doesn't want to have to keep in their Path to Exile or something, but they have to respect the threat of this. And maybe their removal spell, if they do decide to keep it in, is not going to hit this anyway, right? Like we mentioned Storming Entity as kind of having hexproof in a way in Modern, where you can't Fatal Push it, very often you can't Lightning Bolt it, and you can't Skyclear Apparition it, and the list goes on. And this card just takes that principle to the extreme.
Yeah, if 5 is infinite in the format, 7 is like infinite plus.
And when we talk about 7, whenever we think about cheating mana cost into play, the first place my mind always goes is Neoform. And I do wonder if there is some kind of weird unconventional new Neoform deck we can shoehorn this into.
It is kind of a weirdly arbitrary, like, it sizes up in a very, very interesting way once you start saying, I'm going to put my library into my hand and then take game actions. So this card, in theory, could be a pseudo backup finisher / actual finisher for that deck.
And if nothing else, just this is a blue card, Thoughtscour is a blue card, and that's a sequence that I think you're going to see very often is turn 1 Thoughtscour into this on turn 2, really putting the opponent to the test. And I quite like this implementation of Delve from a design standpoint, where Delve doesn't care what you're exiling or how it got there in the first place, just that it's in your graveyard. But this gives you an added layer where now you have a reason to care about what those cards are. So you can still play this and turbo this out with Mishra's Bauble or Fetchlands, and you will definitely see that over the course of the next few months. But then also, if you can find a way to work some extra spell density in there, then you do get rewarded for that as well.
Yeah, that is the big problem with Delve in this format, is it's so hard to balance Delve around Fetchlands, and this card is sort of a way to do that.
Yeah, it's maybe some interesting competing incentives in the set as well, where we know that the isn't mechanic for the set is Delirium. So you care a lot about having this wide spread of card types in your graveyard. This cares about a specific card type, or I guess two of them, and also eats those cards from your graveyard. So maybe some tension there in terms of deck building choices, but that's a good thing to have. One of the problems that has been plaguing certainly Standard, but also other formats recently is, the best cards are just the best cards everywhere in all formats and in all decks at all times, and you just cram them into cram as many of them into the same deck as you can. With this, there are certain diminishing returns, and there are trade-offs between this and other cards. So you can definitely pursue this, and I think that's worth doing, but it comes at a cost, and I think that's good.
Yeah, really awesome. We've got the regular art and the sketch art up if you want to take a look at both of those. If the sketch art is your thing, this one is exceptionally on the sketch side, so really take a look at it.
And not in the sketchy side, just on the sketch side. It has a very, would you call it like this avant-garde feel?
Yeah, it feels preliminary. It is that's kind of what it's supposed to be doing, right?
I don't know what avant-garde actually means, is my confession here, but it sounds somewhat sophisticated, so we'll just go with it.
Absolutely.
And with that, that is our preview card for Star City Games, Murktide Regent. And during the preview season, you understand there are a lot of good cards to go around, and especially in this set, which seems to be bangers from pillar to post. But you want one of the cream of the crop, and like I said, I don't think this is the next Hogak, but I do think this will be a fixture of Modern for some time to come. So a pleasure to get to unveil this one to the world, to talk to you about it, and we'll be seeing this one on Modern tables very shortly, I'm sure.
Absolutely.